Welcome back to The Mind, a podcast series by the Ramakrishna Vedanta Centre, New Zealand, a conversation at the meeting point of modern science and the contemplative traditions of yoga and Vedanta. I'm Rama, your host. This is the last lesson of our long middle module, the summit the whole climb has been heading toward. Across 7 lessons, the group has taken the mind apart and watched it work. Its waves, its filters, its noise, its attention, its rhythms, its roots in the body. Today, they ask the simplest and largest question of all. What does it actually mean to know something? And the answer turns out to have 2 forms. One kind of knowing keeps a gap between you and the world, the knower here, the known over there, and it is the engine of ordinary life. The other kind closes that gap, and the world stops being something you stand outside of. The mind, it turns out, is the bridge between those 2 ways of knowing. The very same mind that can lock you into suffering can carry you out of it. An ancient line puts it in 6 words. The mind alone is the cause of both bondage and freedom. Today, we see how. 2 modes of knowing, the mind as bridge. Let's join them. The same room, evening light fading. A sense of something drawing to completion.
Last time we came right down to the body and the breath. What did you find when you took hold of the slow wave?
The long out-breaths at night when my mind won't put the day down. It actually loosened the grip. I stopped wrestling the thoughts and just breathed out longer, and they let go on their own.
6 slow breaths and an upright posture before a hard class. The gain settled in me, just as you said, and the room came halfway to meet me. I'm starting to trust it.
I did the before and after test, measured the pace of my thoughts, slowed my breathing for 5 minutes, measured again. They were clearly slower. I couldn't argue with my own data, which was the point.
I matched the doorway to the state. Slow breath for the racing ones, gentle movement and warmth for the collapsed ones. And I tried reading shutdown as protection rather than disengagement. That single change altered how I sat with people, and I think they felt it. So I arrived today with a question that's been growing all module. We've taken the mind completely apart. What's it for? What is it actually trying to do?
That is the perfect question to end on, Doctor. And it has a surprisingly precise answer. The mind is a bridge. Today we find out between what, and why everything depends on which way it's facing. Let's begin in a concert hall.
A concert hall? After 7 lessons of waves and nerves?
After all of it, Sarah, because this is where it lands. Picture 2 people at the very same concert, hearing the very same music. The first arrives frazzled, still half at work, worrying about the drive home. Her mind is jumping, the music, her own thoughts, someone coughing 2 rows back. She hears the music, but it has to push its way through all the clutter in her head. Even the loveliest passage arrives half buried. Now the second person. She has lived with this piece for months. She knows where it's going, what it's reaching for. The moment it begins, she's simply in it. There's no effort to understand, understanding just arrives. And for whole stretches, there's no her listening to the music. There's only the music, and she's inside it.
Same concert, completely different evening.
Same notes, 2 different worlds, Sarah, and the whole lesson is in that gap. Those are the 2 ways the mind can know anything at all. The first woman is in what we'll call difference-based knowing. There's her, and there's the music, and a flickering gap between them, that beat we've met all module, the felt distance between the one who knows and the thing known. The second woman has slipped into unity-based knowing. Her inner rhythm has come into tune with the music's, the gap has closed, the flicker has stopped, and what's left is just the thing itself, whole.
I know both of those exactly, from the front of a classroom. Some days I'm managing the lesson, watching myself teach, monitoring the clock. Other days I disappear into it, and there's just the teaching happening. The second kind doesn't even feel like effort.
And which day do your students learn more, James?
No contest. The second.
Because in the second, you and the work have come into tune, and the gap that costs all the energy has closed. Now here's the line the tradition built on. 6 words from an old Upanishad. The mind alone is the cause of both bondage and freedom. Notice what that does and does not say. It doesn't say the mind is the problem, to be silenced or escaped. It says the mind is neutral, an instrument that can run in 2 modes. In one mode, it manufactures the very sense of separation that aches. In the other, the same instrument becomes clear and lets the wholeness that was always there be seen. The path was never about destroying the mind, it's about retuning it.
So it's not quiet the mind because the mind is bad. It's the mind can play in 2 keys, and most of us only know one of them.
That's it exactly, Kai. Most of us live our whole lives in the first key and never suspect there's a second. The rest of today is about the second.
You call the mind a bridge. A bridge between what?
Between 2 worlds we all live in, Doctor, though we mostly only notice one. The first is the ordinary world. Things happen one after another, in time, in space, one event causing the next. You're here, the world is out there, made of countless separate parts. Call it the world of time, space, and cause. It's where life is lived, and difference-based knowing is its native tongue. The tradition has an old name for it, and a frank one. Lower knowledge, not lower as in worthless, but lower as in nearer the surface. It's the knowing you use to drive a car, run an experiment, pay a bill. Indispensable.
And the second world?
Harder to point at, because it isn't somewhere else, Doctor. It's the same reality seen whole instead of in pieces, not one thing after another, but everything at once. Like the difference between hearing a tune note by note and grasping the whole melody as a single shape. No sharp line between you and what you see. Both are patterns in one field of awareness. The tradition calls this the higher knowledge, and it's the home ground of unity-based knowing. And here is the key to the whole module. The mind stands between these 2 worlds, like a bridge between 2 shores. Turned one way, it steps the vast whole awareness down into the world of separate parts, and the parts start to look like the only reality there is. Burned the other way, it lets that wholeness be recognized again, without ever losing the ability to come back and do the taxes.
So the same bridge, depending on which way you walk across it. That's why you keep saying the mind isn't the enemy.
Precisely, Kai. The enemy was never the bridge, only forgetting it can turn around. And how does it turn? Slowly, by that beat coming down. Think back to the 2 listeners. The frazzled one has a wide, fast flicker between herself and the music. The attuned one has almost none. The whole art of meditation, stripped to its bones, is the gradual narrowing of that gap. The old texts describe 3 stages, and they're not 3 different exercises, just one process deepening. First, effortful holding. You keep bringing attention back, it keeps slipping, there's a rhythm of clarity and distraction, and it feels like work. Then it smooths out. The way oil poured from a jug falls in one unbroken thread instead of drips. The gaps close, ease comes. And then, at moments, the gap is simply gone, and there's only the thing known, luminous and effortless, with no separate you standing outside it.
That first stage is the only one I've ever met. The slipping and returning, the feeling that I'm bad at it.
Then hear this clearly, Sarah, because it matters. That slipping and returning is the practice working, not failing. The returning is the bridge being built, one step at a time. Nobody starts on the far shore. The effort of the first stage is exactly what ripens into the ease of the later ones. What feels like failing is the early form of succeeding.
When you say the gap is simply gone, part of me hears the mind switches off. Is that what you mean? Because that sounds less like clarity and more like blankness.
A fair worry, James, and the tradition answers it with one of its most beautiful images, so let me give it to you. Take a clear crystal, perfectly transparent, and set a red flower beside it. The crystal glows red. Set a blue cloth beside it, and it glows blue. The crystal isn't switched off. It's the opposite. It's so clear, so free of any color of its own, that it takes on the color of whatever rests beside it, faithfully, without adding the slightest tint. A cloudy stone can't do that. Only a clear one can. The mind in unity-based knowing is that crystal. It doesn't go blank. It goes transparent. So clear that it takes the exact form of whatever it rests upon, the knower, the knowing, and the known all becoming one in it, with no distortion of its own laid over the top.
So it's not less mind, it's mind with the fog taken out.
Beautifully put, James. All the fog and none of the light removed. Everything we've studied all module was that fog, the old conditioning that tints what you see, the background noise, the gain cranked too high, the restless flicker. Take those away and you don't get an empty mind. You get a perfectly clear one, showing you exactly what's there. And then something turns over, quietly. When the crystal is that clear, what it finally reflects is its own nature in everything it meets. The knower recognizes itself in the known.
That last step lost me a bit. Recognizes itself in the known. Recognizes what?
Let me give you the oldest image for it, Kai. A wave on the ocean, if it could think, might spend its whole life anxious about being a small, separate thing, rising and about to crash. Difference-based knowing is the wave certain it's just a wave, and then, without stopping being a wave, it realizes, I was always the ocean, waving. Nothing was added, nothing new arrived. It simply recognized what was already true. That's what the clear crystal sees at last, that the awareness looking out and the world looked at were never two separate substances, but one reality appearing as many. The traditions call that recognition the heart of freedom. Not gaining something you lacked, but seeing through something that was never really there, the gap itself.
And you can see that and still be a person, still make dinner, still worry about your kids.
Still make dinner, still love your kids fiercely, Sarah, only without the constant ache of feeling cut off from everything. The wave keeps waving. It just stops being terrified of the sea it's made of. You don't leave the ordinary world. You stop mistaking it for the whole story.
Let me bring this to the ground I work on. Can this bridge idea actually touch real anxiety, real depression, real trauma, or is it only for the meditation cushion?
It goes right to the heart of them, Doctor, and gives you a way to see what you're already doing. Start with anxiety. What is it in this language? The mind throws up a thought about the future, what if it goes wrong, and awareness grabs that thought as if it were the event itself. Then another, and another. Knower and known cycle endlessly, never coming into tune, the gap held wide open. The person feels it as racing thoughts, a body that won't settle, the sense of being chased by something that never quite arrives.
And when I get them to take 3 slow breaths and notice these are just thoughts.
Then you've done something precise, Doctor, even if it looked simple. You haven't silenced the thoughts or solved the future, but you've shifted them from being lost in the content to noticing the awareness the content appears in. The flicker doesn't vanish, but it loosens. That loosening is the bridge turning, just slightly, toward the wider view. You've helped them step back from the wave and notice the water. Now depression and the grinding loops of rumination are different. There the beat isn't fast and loud, it's heavy and stuck. The same harsh thought about oneself circling and circling. The mind has narrowed onto one object, usually the self seen unkindly, and the wider, kinder awareness feels out of reach.
So where does the healing start there? You can't argue someone out of that loop.
You can't, and trying to attack the loop head-on rarely helps, Doctor. It starts the same way, but gentler and slower, helping the person notice, even for a second, that they are aware of the loop, and that the awareness itself isn't depressed. That's a tiny doorway, but it's a real one, and everything else opens from it. And trauma is different again, and here I'd want you firmly in the room. Trauma is the body holding intense charge it couldn't process, swinging between flooding and shutdown, and the bridge itself strained or collapsed. The deep settling we've described needs a system that feels safe, and trauma is precisely the loss of that safety. So the work is slower. It rebuilds the felt sense of safety first, and it's no place for going it alone. The contemplative methods and good trauma-informed care belong side by side here, not as rivals.
What I'm hearing is that across all 3, the instrument making the symptom is the same instrument that carries the recovery.
That's the whole turn, Doctor, and it changes everything downstream. The mind stops being the enemy to be beaten. There's nothing in there to destroy. The effort changes character too, not crushing the thought or the feeling, but retuning the relationship to it, widening the field until the disturbance is something appearing in awareness rather than the whole of it. And recovery gets a direction that isn't just back to how I was. It's toward fluency on the bridge, the freedom to move between sharp, focused thinking and spacious, whole awareness as the moment needs. That old line again. The mind alone is the cause of both bondage and freedom. The same capacities that spin the suffering can, retuned, yield clarity and steadiness. The path isn't different, only the direction the bridge is facing.
I have to raise this because it's all I hear about. Machines can already do a frightening amount of what we call thinking. So where does that leave any of this? Is the inner work just obsolete now?
The opposite, Kai, and the machines themselves are what make it clear. So let's look straight at it. Think about what these systems actually do, and they do it brilliantly. They find patterns, draw inferences, predict, sort signal from noise, tell correct from incorrect. Every bit of it runs on difference. This versus that, input versus output. That's difference-based knowing, the lower knowledge, done at a scale and speed no human can touch. And that's genuinely valuable. But notice what it is.
It's all the first listener in a way, processing the notes. Never the second listener who's inside the music.
That's exactly the line, Kai, and you drew it yourself. Unity-based knowing asks for something difference-based processing can't supply. A knower who recognizes itself in what's known. That wave realizing its ocean moment needs an I am actually present to do the recognizing. A system built entirely on staying separate from its data has no one home to close the gap. It can do something uncanny though, and this is the real subtlety. It can imitate the second listener. It can produce beautiful, wise-sounding words drawn from the contemplative texts, mimic the cadence of insight so well you'd swear someone had understood. But that's still the first kind of knowing, dressed in the language of the second.
And the trap is mistaking the imitation for the real thing. Reading the wise words and thinking the knowing is in them.
That's the danger precisely, Kai, and worse, handing over to a machine the one task that by its nature can't be handed over. Because here's where it leaves us, and it's not a small place. As more and more of the difference-based work is done by machines, and done well, the unity-based knowing becomes the distinctly human work. Direct recognition that needs no proof, creativity that comes from that gap-closed stillness rather than from reshuffling what already exists. Compassion, rooted in actually feeling the shared being of another. Wisdom that holds all the clever knowledge inside a larger wholeness. None of that reduces to computation, and none of it can be outsourced. It's what a conscious being can grow into when it stops trying to out-calculate the calculators and turns to what only awareness can do.
So the arrival of these machines isn't the end of the contemplative path. It's an argument for taking it more seriously.
It's the sharpest argument in a long time, Doctor. For ages, the inner work could look optional, a luxury. Now it's coming into focus as the thing that's most our own. The machines, by being so good at the one mode, are quietly showing us the other one and reminding us it was always ours to develop. This week, the practice is to catch the bridge in the act of turning, in small, ordinary moments. You don't need a cushion or an hour. You need 1 second of noticing the awareness in which things appear, rather than being wholly lost in the things. Sarah, once a day, when a worry has you, take 1 slow breath and say inwardly, "This is a thought, appearing in awareness." Don't fight the thought. Just notice the space it's happening in. See if the grip loosens even slightly. That loosening is the bridge turning.
Notice the space the worry's happening in, instead of drowning in the worry. 1 breath. I can find that.
James, find your second listener state on purpose. Pick 1 lesson this week, and before it, set down the monitoring and the clock watching for a few minutes, and let yourself drop into the teaching itself. Notice afterward what was different, for you and for them.
Drop into it instead of managing it and watch what changes. Yes.
Kai, run the experiment that fits the skeptic. Spend 10 minutes with something that doesn't reduce to information, a piece of music, the night sky, a person you love, and notice the difference between thinking about it and simply being with it. Gap closed. Let that be your own evidence that the second mode is real and yours.
Being with something instead of analysing it and noticing the difference is real. I'll try the night sky.
And Dr. Watson, with 1 patient, name to yourself which mode is stuck. The wide, racing gap of anxiety, the heavy, frozen loop of low mood, and offer the smallest bridge. 1 breath. 1 noticing that they are aware of the thought, not only inside it. And keep holding the truth that the instrument making the symptom is the one that carries the healing.
Name the stuck mode, offer the smallest bridge, and treat the mind as the ally, not the enemy. That's a different way to practice medicine, and a better one.
Then we've reached the summit this whole module was climbing toward. You've seen what the mind is for, to be the bridge home. What remains, in the modules ahead, is to learn the territory of why we suffer when the bridge faces the wrong way, and the practical craft of turning it around.
And so we close the middle of our journey. Across this module, the group took the mind apart, its waves, its meeting with the world, its filters and noise, its attention, its rhythms, its roots in the body. Today they put it back together, around a single idea. The mind is a bridge between two ways of knowing. One keeps a gap, the knower here and the known over there, and runs all of practical life. The other closes the gap, so that for a while there is no longer you observing the world, but only the world, whole, and you within it, like the second listener who has vanished into the music. The whole of meditation is the patient narrowing of that gap, and the slipping and returning is not failure, but the bridge being built. The still mind does not go blank, it goes clear, like a crystal taking the color of what rests beside it, until the knower recognizes its own nature in everything it meets, the wave remembering it was always the ocean. This is why the same mind that binds us can free us. It is why suffering is not an enemy to destroy, but a bridge to turn. And it is why, in an age of remarkable machines that master the first kind of knowing, the second kind, direct, conscious, compassionate recognition, becomes the work most truly our own. To go deeper, the full Lesson 3.8 is available in the course Beginners, Conversations on the Mind in the Light of Modern and Spiritual Sciences on the Ramakrishna Vedanta Center's website, www.vedanta.nz. It is also available as an app on Google Play and the Apple App Store by searching for Vedanta NZ. Next time we open a new module, the human condition, and ask the question this one leaves us with. If a held open gap is the root of suffering, how exactly does it shape a human life? And what is the way home? Until then, be gentle with your mind.